Thank you for listening to this training audio. We hope it inspires and equips you. This recording is by Stela Stansfield, speaking on connecting with a digitally native generation at the Open the Door Children's Ministry Conference on the 29th of February 2020.
Can you hear me now? Yay! I feel like I'm about to start singing to you all. If I'm moving away, which I do, wave at me, let me know that you can't hear me again. So hello, I'm Stella, and I feel like a bit of a fraud being here because you really are the experts. I mean, I'm looking at this room and there's so many people that do such an amazing job and actually do it as a job, working with children and young people in church, reaching out. And I also feel like this is great because this morning, you know, you're all experts in education and teaching children, and you know that, you know, education, repetition. So the two fantastic talks we've already heard this morning, pretty much I'm going to reinforce what they're saying, repeat some of the things they said, which is great because it really means that we're all saying what is important. But so I am a mother of two fabulous girls that I really love and admire, but also drive me insane. I worship at St Andrews in Leyland, and I am absolutely not a tech expert. I'm also not a children's ministry expert. So you're thinking, why on earth are you here? Good question. I qualified as a social worker 25 years ago. But before that, as a child, I became a Christian. I came to faith, and that was through my grandmother's example, who's still my spiritual hero, but also through really good and intentional children's ministry work that existed in the area where I lived in Portugal. And that's just in case you were wondering, what's the accent about? There you go, I'll sort that one out now. So, and I've been involved in children's ministry and youth ministry since I was 13. You know, we got involved quite early, teaching, being leaders, and I've been doing it non-stop. I've never not done it. I have tried to retire a few times, but God and Katie Turner won't let me. And because of that, I still do it. And I love my Sunday club group of children. I learned so much from them, and they've been such an encouragement to me. The conversations they're going and having away with friends at home, what the parents are telling me, I just love the time I spend with them, and you know, I wish I could spend more time with them, even though I keep saying they're not really my age group. But as a social worker, I've always worked with children, young people and families in very vulnerable situations. And for the last, I spent around 14 years developing services for children missing from home and those involved in child sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. And part of my job, so I supported children directly and their families. I managed and set up lots of teams. I worked with the police for many, many years. And I also did training. I was commissioned by Lancashire County Council, by the LSCB, Lancashire Safeguarding Children's Board, to write their training and deliver their training to professionals. So it's something I got to know a lot about and became really interested. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is not so that these are my credentials, so listen to me, but is to say, I know that talking about children and social media and children's ministry and social media and digital technology are things that a lot of us would much rather not do. It'd be so much easier to just say, I don't want anything to do. It was so much easier in the days without it. And so a lot of what I might say may be a little bit controversial to you, but hopefully what I wanted to do, we've got about 40 minutes now, if we can spend some time just challenging and thinking through, why is it important that we're even talking about it? How am I going to manage this now? Right. I'm not feeling great today, by the way, so I do need to get back to my notes, but it'll be fun trying to do this. So I want to acknowledge why some of you might be resisting a little bit the whole idea. And I don't know if you can all see the screen, but a lot of you may identify with this quote. Yeah, I've heard a few nods. I could try and spend some time getting you to guess who said it, but it's easier just to show you. Oh, did it not work? No. Oh, don't. Yay. There you go. That quote is from before Jesus was born. People have been complaining about children and teenagers and young people for millennia. So you're not alone. You're not just a grumpy old person. It's just what happens. It's just what we do. And that's because there's always tension between those who are growing up and coming up and those of us who've been around a bit longer and see things in a different way. And it doesn't mean that we're the ones who are always right. And there's always this tendency, like, I'm Generation X, if that means anything to you. And we love saying things about, these millennials, all a bunch of snowflakes, can't cope with any crisis or anything. This is just something that we do. And I had hoped it's not going to work. No. I think I might have to do it. The beauty of tech. Yeah. So, it's frozen. Oh, there you go. And I was hoping to illustrate that with a little clip, but actually, fantastically, I made one of those basic mistakes you don't make. So first piece of advice, YouTube clips are fab. Always download them first, don't rely on the Wi-Fi, because the Wi-Fi is not working. And now I can't show you the clip, so I'm just going to perform it for you. So, if you can imagine Downton Abbey, and this is a conversation about radio. So those of you who may have watched the episodes where, see, I didn't even used to watch Downton Abbey until recently, so I don't even know all the names, but where the young niece is trying to really push for a radio to come in the house, and there's all this resistance, and certainly the butler is not impressed at all about having that horrible box in the house. And eventually what changes their mind is that the king is going to make a speech on the wireless. And if it's good enough for the king, then we need to at least support the king by renting the wireless for a day and bringing it to the house. And it won't corrupt anyone because it's only for the day. After all, it's only a fad. It won't last. And that's been the attitude from generations and generations, especially when there's technology involved, that the older generations tend to resist. It happened with a locomotive. It was meant to be a devilish thing. It happened when cars became more... It's a fad. It won't last. Rock and roll, we'll give it a few months. It's not going to continue. All of these different things that every time come. It's really funny to read sermons from preachers about the Industrial Revolution and the evils of some of the machinery that we now just take for granted. And likewise, it's funny to also, if you watch Downton Abbey, go on YouTube and look for the clip about the refrigerator. When they finally buy a refrigerator, a fridge, and the cook is not impressed. What's this about? Why can't we just have ice delivered like we've always had it? So what I'm saying is it is natural that we have that. But the thing is, if we insist on we're right, you're wrong, tech is bad, good old days are better, we run the risk of making children associate the message to the method. That everything, if you insist that the only way you ever communicate with children and engage children with the Bible is through ways that for them are dated, that they're not exposed to in school, that they're not exposed to, that they don't value anymore, then that will be the association between the message. You make it irrelevant. And let's not be guilty of causing little ones to stumble, because Jesus had pretty strong words to say about those who did it and did it knowingly just because they couldn't be bothered. So, something quite important to consider. But before we continue, let me just tell you a little bit more about this generation. So I'm just going to keep coming here. They're digital natives. And a digital native, you're probably familiar with this term now, means that they've been born into a world where digital technology exists. It's all around them. It's what they're exposed to from birth. A lot of us in this room, are digital immigrants. We've come into a world of digital technology. And therefore, it's easy for us to opt in and out. Just quickly, raise your hands if you can still remember dial-up phones. Okay, I can. Floppy disks. Computers that had small screens and weighed a ton. They were like massive. Great. Do you know that when IBM created the first supercomputer, which was a huge thing and it took a huge room to fill, they said, do you know, this is a bit ridiculous because in the whole world there's about the need for about 5 of these computers. It's a fad. It won't go, it won't last. That's what they said. What about life before mobile phones? Can anybody remember that? Okay, so there's a few. And what about mobile phones that were only used for making calls and to text? Do you remember those? Okay. Well, let me tell you about our children that we're working with. Our 11-year-olds, so I'm starting at the top end of our children's ministry. Our 11-year-olds, so born in 2009, have never known a world without Google. It's never existed. Or a world without YouTube, or Facebook, or Skype, or Wikipedia, where you do all your homework, or Twitter, or WhatsApp. That has never existed. Therefore, that's always been part of their communication, their conversations, their environment. Our 9-year-olds, so going a bit younger, have never known all of that, a world without all of that, and without Instagram or Snapchat. And TikTok has only just arrived a couple of years ago, and all the children know about it, and all the children are using it. And as with everything, there's good and bad things about it already. So what we're talking about, I'm afraid to tell you, it's no longer Gen Z. Gen Z, move aside, you're old news. We're on to Generation Alpha. That's the generation of our children. Children that are born from 2010 up to 2024 are Generation Alpha. So we're still excited about Gen Z, and so we should. They're our teenagers and all that we know about them. But we've got this brand new generation that we're going to get to know, and they already have some characteristics. So starting in 2010, that's the year the iPad came out. So as these babies are being born, iPads have always been around. Technology that you interact with your fingers rather than typing is just part of what you know from birth. And at the moment, 2.5 million baby alphas are being born around the world. 2.5 million every week are born around the world. Now, when this generation is starting, you're talking about app was the word of the year. So some of us are still coming up, to terms with what apps are. Well, they've been around since forever for these children. And they live in a world where every minute, so how many minutes have we been here already? 100 hours of video content is uploaded on YouTube. So every minute we've spent here, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video content has been uploaded on YouTube. So there's always more to see, more to look. And so these children are more influenced by visual and video than by written and verbal. And these are some of the characteristics that we need to start paying attention to. But this is also a world that for the first time in history, the average age of first marriage is 29.7, which is older than the average age of first birth, which is 27.7 in developed countries. So society is changing, and the reality for these children is different from that which we used to know and work. So when we think in families, that matters too. So one of the things about this generation already is that the percentage of children that leave their early formative years in family arrangements that do not include both biological parents are higher than any previous generation before. So when we engage with a child, when we look at children, when we're talking to them, you don't know what kind of family life they may have experienced. You're not always thinking about a family with mum and dad present, or even biological parents, or any parents of any sort. You don't know what experience they've had. This is also a world of screenagers. So this is what they're going to be. Move aside, teenagers, they're screenagers because of the time that they spend on screens. So they're multi-screen and multitask. I don't know if you're used to seeing children and young people, they always have more than one screen up. They're always doing more than one thing. They always have several conversations up. It's normal, and those younger people here, they can recognize that because that's it. The younger you are, that's the trend. And that's because that's what the technology provides. And so glass has become the new medium for content dissemination. And unlike paper as a medium, glass is a kinesthetic, visual, interactive, connective, and portable format, because all the screens are glass. And that's what these children are going to grow up with, are growing up with. So things have changed in that sense as well. So for Generation Alpha, we're talking about extension of their own consciousness and identity. So some of those reservations that we have, although recognizing them, they're valid, they're real, they're not the same that our children experience, and they won't necessarily. So they'll look at you and they'll see the butler of Downton Abbey, and they'll see all the old people, because that's what you'll come across if all you say to them is, that's rubbish, you shouldn't go online and you shouldn't do this, and because they'll just go, you don't know what you're talking about. And if you don't know what you're talking about, then when you're telling them about Jesus, do you know what you're talking about? Just something to think about. So they are also known as Generation Glass. Generation Glass because it's present everywhere. It's on their wrists and it will be used more and more. It's on glasses. You've got glasses where you can have the Google information uploaded. You know, it will be on the driverless cars that we are very close to have and that they will probably be using, and they can be looking at screens while in the cars. We have interactive whiteboards in schools. There will be interactive desks. At the moment, there's schools already that have the policy that each child, each pupil need to have a tablet with them at all times. I was discussing that with a friend of mine who was thinking, well, I'm going to have to buy a tablet for my daughter because she's going into high school and they demand that she has a tablet. And that's because a lot of leading figures in education, they defend that actually they need to have a lot of, because they are so used to digital everywhere, in order to get engaged with education, they need to have a rich digital experience and to keep their way of thinking and the way they learn. So, this is some of the things about the children that we're working with, but particularly in the UK, let me just give you some information. This is just, when you get bored of me, just look at children, but in the UK, some research shows that 49% of 8 to 17-year-olds say that what they do and see online defines who they are. What they're seeing, what they're doing, what they're playing defines who they are and who they become. Who needs to be there? We need to be there. Once you have a smartphone, most teenagers will check their phone at least 150 times a day. But sadly, in the UK, 47% of 7 to 10-year-olds don't have access to a playground with slides and swings where they can just go and play. That's 47% of 7 to 10-year-olds. Therefore, playing online, it's really important because the alternative is not there. Selfies. On average, a young person will take 12 selfies before choosing the one to post. And at least 50% will admit having used filters so that it looks perfect. And a selfie with less than 48 likes is not a very good selfie. So, these things are important. And also this research talked about, from parents' perspective, the age of independence for children is around 11, 12. At 11, they get their first mobile phone. At 12, they're allowed to go out into town centres on their own. That's kind of how parents are perceiving this group. So it's not okay to say, oh good, that's for the youth ministry, we can stop talking about it because this is children's ministry. No, because in order to cope and to know and to be safe and to grow as disciples, as it's been said already, we need to start when they're toddlers, when they're little. It's not good enough to just leaving it. For example, something a bit stark. In the last 2 years, over 6,499 children under 14 were investigated by the police for sexting. 306 of those were children under 10, and some of them were as young as 4 years old. Okay? It's important you know this because although they shouldn't be online, and a lot of these things shouldn't be happening, but the fact that it shouldn't be, it doesn't mean that it doesn't. So when we say, I can't be bothered with being online, I can't be bothered with social media, I can't be bothered, well, our children are bothered, they're there. So we're just turning our backs and choosing not to engage, not to talk about it with them, not to get involved. And life has changed how we portray life. I don't know that, in the world of phone calls and letter writing, I can't imagine that I would stop watching a program to say, oh, I'm eating custard creams while watching this, and I would start writing a letter and put it in the post and send it, or maybe ring all my friends to let them know. But it's changed, hasn't it? People are doing it all the time. Oh, I just had a cup of coffee. Thanks, I needed to know that. But that's the world that the children... So again, I'm older, I can go, why do I need to know? Children want to know, need to know. But also they're influenced by those who are out there doing it. So celebrities need followers because the more followers they have, the more money they make. It's very simple. But they're the ones that influence how children, young people, and ourselves portray our lives. We want to be perfect so people will like. We want to say meaningful things so people will follow. And so that's influencing how we're getting involved. But again, children did not create this world. Children are arriving at it. It's us who've been inventing things, we've been making them mainstream. So to get annoyed at them and angry at them, to me, is not the answer. Just to put things in context, in recent study, so talking about teenagers, 1 in 3 15-year-olds would rather have their hand chopped off than lose their phone, than have their phone taken off. And 1 in 3 30-year-olds would rather give up sex than their phone. So that's kind of the context that we're living. And social media is done in a way that, wants people to keep involved. So it's an example of streaks. And on Snapchat, and you probably have heard the kids talking about it, but it's just one example of many. You've got streaks on Snapchat, you've got the likes, but the thing with something like this is that you're rewarded for keeping in touch, for keeping it going. And a Snapchat streak, some of you may have them, is when you send direct snaps back and forth with a friend for several days, and you get rewarded for how long you keep that streak going without interrupting. So you get little stickers for lasting 100 days. And there's people waking up in the middle of the night to make sure the streaks are still going because it becomes status. The more you have, the more streaks you got going and the longer they have. It shows that people care. People want to talk about things with you, even though a lot of the times there's a lot of people I know that what they do is just put streak and keep the streak going. And it just goes a general one to everybody, streak, and they'll get a streak back, and so the streak continues. But it's the world that they're part of. It's about social acceptance. And we are under pressure to look good, to seem good. And we have a lot of people influencing us on what to do and what not to do. And it's not just adults, but do you know about kid influencers? So Ryan has got, just look at that, if you can see it, 23.7 million subscribers. This kid has got that many people who will regularly watch his videos. He makes a fortune. And how old is he? 8 years old. And, you know, there are many others like that. And the issue is not that they are influencers, it's that our children are following them. So here's another one. And this is about fashion and how beautiful they look and how cute they are. And it's parents quite often that are promoting and running the accounts because the children aren't old enough to have them. Kids start following influencers before they can even read or write. I'm just going to check my time. Oh, good. I never started it, so I had my time here. So we can start from scratch now. Brilliant. No, I need to keep an eye. So, no, I'll keep an eye, especially as we've got lunch, very important, afterwards. So this is important. So what I was talking, ever chat, that's a good conversation starter. Ever chat, who do they follow online? Which YouTube channels do they subscribe to? You know, if you don't know, ask. That's the best way. I was having a chat with my daughter and it's fascinating who she follows and why she follows, but actually it's fascinating to see how some of her learning through the years has come into that. Gaming, for example, you know, we all complain about how long they spend gaming, but gaming is now a profession. And this kid, he won $1 million for playing Fortnite. And there are digital athletes that play games. There's digital Olympiads. You know, there is a complete and different world that sometimes is not the world we're aware of. I am not ignoring the risks, and I won't ignore the risks. And again, we could spend all day talking about the risks. But the risks reinforce the need and the importance for us not to turn our back. So cyberbullying, we all know about stories of children committing suicide because of that. Mental health, the impact social media and the digital world can have on it. Even things like cyber flashing, have you heard of that now? So you can be, or especially children, it happens quite a lot in young people, on the train or like a shopping centre, somewhere public, and you get messages pinged to you of usually men's genitals, and it's cyber flashing, and it happens because you've got either Bluetooth or you've got AirDrop or whatever, and it's open, and that happens. So there's things happening all the time. And the influence and the pressure, one example, this is one example of many, but the Love Island face or the Instagram face. Now, I'm not commenting, and people have different opinions, and the thing is, apparently, primary-aged children are one of the main groups watching Love Island. I'm sorry, but what? You know, and they're following it on Instagram, and this face that apparently costs £25,000 to achieve has increased the number of very young people asking for plastic surgery. And then this is reinforced by all the filters on Instagram and Snapchat. And there is such a thing now as Snapchat dysmorphia in young girls. It's a condition, and that's because of how they perceive and how they want to look, because these faces, these filters are creating a new standards of beauty that are not who we are not real. And so the pressures are real. And so these are the children that we want to share the good news of the gospel with. These are the children that we want to grow as young disciples. I mean, have you looked around in your church? Do you see, while people are having teas and coffees and the kids are running around, how many of them have got their phones out, or the tablets came out and they're playing games and they're different things? Have you ever, started chats with them about it. It's the best thing I always find in churches. Try and talk to your teenagers. They're probably more petrified of you than you are of them. I love it. There's a few kids I've seen grown, so I always go and say hello to. And what happens, it's like my magic power, my superpower, is to make boys go bright red. Because I just go, hiya, how you doing? Oh my word, you're talking to me. But it's great and keeps the relationship. And actually, I hear the funny comments they make to parents at home. I love it. But I'm noticing they're in church. I'm talking to them. We're having a laugh. And I've noticed, for example, the Visco girls. I started noticing some girls in church with the big jumpers and the T-shirts and things. Now, that's one trend of many online. So it was quite easy. It was quite funny because I just went to them and just like, and they were like, oh, you know about that? And we just had a chat. And actually, we had a chat about how does it look like from a Bible perspective. And it was quite nice. But if you don't know, ask. If you're sitting there going, I have no idea what you're talking about, how would I even know what trends are online? Why don't you arrange a time where you get your teenagers and your children to tell you? Get them to set up a computer. What's important, what we're following, who are the good people to follow online and why? What's everybody doing in school and why? What they're talking about? Find out, ask them. They're the experts. Okay, not lunchtime yet. So, it's not like that. In grown-up church, there is an increasing tendency and trend to start using digital tech and all sorts of different things. And it's really encouraging. And it's things like, they're really, really powerful. For example, like it was being mentioned before, church doesn't have to happen in the church building. And for a lot of people that are struggling with mental health and anxiety, a big group of people is one of the most scary things they can have to deal with. Or people with disabilities. And there's a growing movement of online church that allows people to be part of and have worship time and service, and they're doing it online because that suits their need. But things like, do you remember hearing stories about people that used to smuggle Bibles? Now, this is big and chunky and heavy and difficult to hide. My grandmother had great stories of having to hide pages in the roof tiles of a bedroom. I'll tell you that another day. But now, you get SD card, and you've got the Bible and Bible notes and studies, and how easy are they to smuggle? And if you talk to organizations that do that, they're secret, but there's missionaries that talk about it, they tell you how much easier their work has begun, and how in countries where people can't have missionaries, they can't have open Bible teaching, actually, they now can access it in their own phones. And it's secret and it's easier to hide. So there's a lot of really positive users of tech, and obviously reaching out to new converts in countries where it's really dangerous to become a Christian. And a lot of their work is done online. And that is fantastic. And there's loads of resources. Things like families I know that are doing reading the Bible competition. So they've got some family that lives down south. They've got a couple of children in the family, and then there's grandparents living in different places, and between them they decided to read the Bible, and they've set up this little challenge on an app, and they're all doing it. And the thing is, they can compete with each other because they can see who's done it and who hasn't. It's a great way to do things. There's so many WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and whatever that are prayer groups. My prayer triplet, if we can't meet, we will use our little group to share our prayer resources, to pray for each other. There's loads of groups that are reading Bible together by using different apps. So there are encouraging ways. And the Church of England has been fantastic at producing loads of information and guides and step-by-step. And I really recommend you look. Obviously, I'll talk about these guys in a minute as well, because they're even better. But people are looking at... do you all know what Alexa is? Yeah. So last year, there were 100,000 questions asked on Alexa about the Church of England. We need to make sure Alexa knows what she's talking about, because sometimes the answers are a bit iffy. Try and ask Alexa to self-destroy. It's quite funny what happens. But there are people looking, and actually, on a church near you, the website, there were 38.5 million views last year alone. How many of those may have been children or people interested in children's work, children's ministry? And how many website pages in the churches actually had content aimed at them? You know, there's sometimes content about the activities, but is there actual content for children? Because a lot of websites, church websites I've looked, they've got how to become a Christian and but it's aimed at adults. What about having a good video clip, a good cartoon, a good something that will challenge children or teenagers to think about it? You know, aim it at them. They are looking as well. We all know Proverbs 22:6, start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. This is what we want to do. We need to be teaching our children, and we need to be including them. If we get better at working with adults, then we need to get better at working with children. Proverbs, the whole Bible, keeps teaching us about the way to live wise lives is to understand and grow a love of wisdom. Wisdom brings us closer to God, and we gain wisdom when we know God, when we know His Word. And wisdom just makes hard choices easier, doesn't it? It makes it easier to know how to cope and how to deal with challenges. And that's what we need to be intentionally explaining and showing to our children, how godly wisdom helps them navigate and behave in the world of social media, and how it should influence their digital footprint. For example, I love this old poster. Beautiful feet. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns. From Isaiah 52:7. Digital footprint. How does that apply? You know, there's a good easy session. In the workshop, we'll look at things practically. So that's one of the verses that we'll look at. You know, how can you translate that into social media, into what they're doing online? The Bible is full of guidance and advice regarding our use of digital technology and social media. It's brimming with it. And that's because the Bible, it's about us. And technology is neither good nor bad on its own. Technology becomes good or bad depending on the people that use it and what they use it for. It's us that spoil things or that use it for good. And so it's about our behavior, it's about human behavior. And the Bible tells us what we get wrong and how to get it right and how to become Christ-like and how to help us live a life that is godly. And therefore we can do that. For example, in a world full of fake news, fake information, where everybody's called an expert, we, the church, need to fill the digital world with truth, good life-affirming content about God's kingdom. So we urge to put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbour in Ephesians 4:25. Do we? Are we quick at sharing news without thinking whether they're true or not? Do we always speak truthfully? We need to think about that. And more than anything else, we need to be teaching our children discernment. We need to be helping them to wisely think through what they read and see. Again, these are just lots of verses that we could explore in sessions for different ages. There's so much. For example, my daughter, one of my daughters, this is one of her favourite verses, the whatever verses. And that's because she gets them. She can see how to apply them to her life. So when we're talking about those vloggers and people she follows online, she immediately was saying, well, actually, do you know that in that group, 2 of them are Christians because they've talked about it, you know, in some of the videos they post. And actually, I prefer her because a lot of the vloggers do things like, oh, don't go to school and how to cheat in exams and things like that. And she promotes education, and she even does competitions where she pays for university. And that's Sophia's thing. And, you know, these are ways of helping our children think through and make those decisions because they've learned, they've meditated, they've thought about what does this look like in practice. So this is another verse that, we can have a look at this afternoon. Again, just reminding them, for I'm convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. This message is so important for those struggling with their mental health, for those that are seeking online comfort or sources of information, or actually quite often end up finding sources of more abuse and depression. This is the message we need to have online. And also Psalm 139, where can I go from your spirit? You can't go anywhere. We just heard that before. You can't go anywhere that God isn't. God is online. Wherever they go, when you're looking at things, God is with you. That's both good and frightening, because it is about knowing that He sees and He can help, but you're not alone. There's no problems that you can't face, because God understands social media much better than we do. Now, there's loads and loads of verses. We could go Psalm 101, James, isn't James great? Talk about all the tongue issues and everything, how bad we are. Just the posts, all cyberbullying, so much to talk about. But the best resource, and I'll speed up, is you. You need to be a digital role model. The same principles that you use offline, repetition, modeling behavior, that's what you're doing as well. Be an influencer, because actually you have been called to be light and salt. What's that but actually being an influencer? That's what Jesus called you to be. He was saying already, be an influencer. And you know what? You already are, whether you know or not, because if you are involved in children's ministry, you've got a bunch of little followers that are watching what you do and what you say, and they are listening, even though sometimes you might think that they're not. They are listening, and they will apply it, especially if you translate it to them. The whole idea of in preaching is application. I'm talking about translating. You translate what the Bible's saying into a language they understand, into a reality they understand. Now, just think about it. Jesus sitting next to you, looking at the apps you're using, at the posts you're posting, or things you're reading. What app would Jesus use? What would he choose? In fact, have you ever, and I'm going to ask you to do this, can you just acknowledge your phone? I know this is weird, but just acknowledge. Can you just either get it out, look at it, acknowledge that you've got a phone? Because actually, I would say about 99.9% of people in here, if not 100%, will have a phone. Now let me ask you a question about your phone. How many of you have dedicated your phone to God?
Yeah.
Well done. And as you may, we do this with our homes. When we move into a new home, we often pray and ask God to bless the home. We pray for a new car, that God will use it in its ministry. What about your laptop? What about your tablet? What about your phone? Have you prayed to God and said, this is a tool in my hands. May everything I do in it be for your glory. How can I use it to be a blessing to others? How do I use it to share the gospel? Because actually it starts with you. If you start thinking in those terms, then things change. And actually, you can tell children about it. You can teach them young to do the same. And it's powerful, because then, it does hear and it does work. Do you know that song, that children's song? Please help me if you do. I hope it's not just Katie that knows it. Whatever you do, whatever I do, do. Okay, there's a few people that know it. Do it all for the glory of God. And the song goes, whether I eat or whether I drink, whether I jump or whether I fall, whether I do all these different things, I do it all for the glory of God. And actually, I think we should be adding, whether I snap or whether I tweet, whether I post or whether I streak, I do it all for the glory of God. And it's about language. It's about starting to bring. So it's not that you have to be the expert online. It's not that you have to be online again, but you're translating language. You're applying it to the life and to the language that they use. Just ideas. One of the most counter and dangerous ideas that we can be teaching our children goes against what society is teaching them, where they can be whoever they want and do whatever they do, no matter what. And actually, this is a really good opportunity to talk about what that means and the implication and the impact it has on other people. And online, what does it look like? After all, how can a young person stay on the path of purity? By living according to your word. Psalm 119:9. And this psalm is brilliant because it continues telling you step by step what they need to do. It's so easy for us to teach them. I don't know why we're not doing it more practically about digital technology. If they are going to be online, then let them be reminded of God's word and the gospel truth wherever they are. And of course, as per the last conference, don't forget the parents. We need to get them involved, both encouraging them to challenge their perceptions, but encouraging them when they're trying to teach children at home as well, empowering them, including about online behavior. But actually, don't forget that a lot of the parents are now millennials, and actually online communication is important to them more than paper. And when we want to involve parents and we want to send questions at the end of Sunday Club, or meditations for them to do at home, or we want them to know what we've taught, how many of us are doing it? I mean, schools do it by text. How many of us are doing it by text? We make parents fill in forms for safeguarding. We've got their phone numbers. It's not very difficult to add a box to the list and just say, can we send you this information via text? Or create a private group on one of the apps that everybody agrees to go on. So easy. And actually, you could say, we learned this today. It was fantastic. At home, over lunch, why aren't you asking these questions? Or why don't you pray as your children tomorrow are going to learn about this? Really good ways of involving them. And there's loads of resources. So I just put a few examples here. It's easy. How to do it is easy. You just need to make the decision to do it. Because actually there's so much free stuff online that we can use just to make things a little bit more exciting. So the workshop we don't have today, I was quite excited about it. I kind of thought, if nobody comes to mind, I can go to that one. But about the Guardians of Ankara, which is a game, I've had a little sneaky peek at it. Fabulous. Why not, if you're having a social, setting up the game so that you can have a go together. And then if they're going to be playing online, they might as well be playing a game where they're learning and reinforcing Bible truths and Bible stories and engaging with something that's positive and not dangerous. Likewise, we'll look at some of these this afternoon, but like the Superbook, it's got so much stuff, and you can even swipe your little characters and find the one you want, and then you find out all these things about it, and we've got these little videos. And in Sunday Club, we sometimes play some really tenuous games, tenuous links to introduce games and things. Well, there's silly things like you could get tablet in, and instead of playing whack-a-mole, you can smash the serpent, and you can go and get the children involved at doing that, reinforcing the message and the lesson, whatever it was that you've done. There's so many different things. Also, you do need to use discernment, because if you're going to look online, you find some interesting things. Like, for example, Bible Man, supposedly this superhero that goes around and teaches the Bible, and it's awful. It's cringe. Can I please advise you not to use Bible Man videos? They're really, really terrible. So use your God sense and, filters. But for example, there's so many resources. Share Faith is another one that we'll look at later. And they've got Sunday School with loads of videos, devotionals for parents to do on the phones, loads of different things. And of course, you've got the fantastic resources that the Board of Education produces, and they're really good. I keep having a look at them. There's so many ideas and so many resources. These podlets are going to be brilliant. I hope you're all signing up. And actually, it took me a while to find the Instagram account. It wasn't easy. But we need more people to sign up to it because there's a lot of really, really good things. So, things to follow up. For example, I was reading about this the other day. So in a church in Shipley, they were using virtual reality to explore Proverbs and the different mountains children have to climb and the challenges and how God helps and how God is there. And, what a cool different way of doing things. So the issue again is not what to use. And I know for some of us, it can be, we don't have computers, we don't have screens, we don't have things. So use a phone, just be creative. Find a little YouTube clip, download it first, so you don't depend on the Wi-Fi. But for example, the Holy Spirit, whenever I have to talk about the Holy Spirit, I always go to this same clip because the kids love it and they always ask to watch it again and again and again, of a bunch of really stupid Australian students who decide to touch an electric fence. So they first place themselves in a row, and then when they're ready, the one at the end touches the electric fence and they all get a massive shock and fall to the side and everything else, and everybody laughs. But actually, did you see the electric current? But did you see the effect it had on them? What a good way to younger children to talk about the power of the Holy Spirit and the fact that you can't see it. So it's free. It doesn't take a lot of tech because actually kids are quite happy to sit around a small screen. I've got a really old laptop, but I keep it because it's got a bigger screen than normal. And so quite often, rather than try and set up screens and projectors because you never can find where they are, I just take my laptop and we just sit around and we watch things and we have a laugh and then we apply them. We're getting there. So, what I'm trying to say is, again, one, it's important. We need to recognize the children that we're living in. Yes, it's a different world from the one we're used to. That shouldn't stop us from wanting to understand them and engage in a way that they will understand, that makes the Bible, the gospel message, relevant. It's not so much about being super high-tech. Look at all the things that went wrong here. It's about the attitude, it's the being willing to, it's the thinking about it, it's the stopping and thinking, okay. And I am not advocating, can I just say, that we now replace everything, that we stop doing crafts, that we stop doing... It's not about that. They need the alternatives, they need the free time, they need to run around. But it's the starting to translate, to use the language. If anything you do is starting when you're applying, thinking, and how does this apply when they're playing games? Because the little ones are already doing a lot of video watching, and they're already doing a lot of game playing. So how does that apply? If I'm talking about their friends in school, why can't I talk about their friends online as well? Starting to use the language now, being intentional about it. And we do need to speak about openly and unashamedly and teach them about the biblical filter. There's so many filters. That's another really good lesson you can do. Have some fun with a few filters on a few selfies and then teach about the Bible filter and how it helps us to see things differently. And, and a good example for that is Samuel choosing the next king. The filter he and David's father were using, very different from God's filter. Because we learned that, God looks at the heart, doesn't he? So using something completely different. Again, there's so many applications. Through the years, and I'm coming to the end just in time, if you didn't get to watch the video. But through the years, something that I learned working with so many destroyed families and so many destroyed lives was that the hope for rebuilding relationships came down to communication. Either because families had worked on communication before problems happened, or because, and I can't say this enough, because parents were willing to change the way they communicated. Because quite often what we do is we know we're right, and maybe we are, and so we want to prove the point that we're right, and therefore we will stick to. And what do they think? Why are they texting me this? I want them to come downstairs and talk to me face to face. If they talk texting, text. When my oldest daughter went through a little bit of a rebellious period at 13, and she was storming out of the house in the morning, going to school like, she got my temper anyway, it's my fault. But I used to text her and say, ooh, that was ugly, not happy. And actually, because I knew if I tried to confront her at night, it would bring everything up. So she would text me during the day, I'm really sorry, I don't know why I was so stroppy. And we'd have a really nice, lots of texts, a few funny things in the middle. And fine, nighttime comes, we meet again, and it's done, it's dusted. It's not part of our conversation anymore because the conversation's already happened. Conversations don't always have to be face-to-face. They don't replace face-to-face, obviously, but then face-to-face was nice. Face-to-face was positive. If that's how they're communicating, let's communicate in ways that engage with them. Like I said, there's relationships that I saw being built after, suicide attempts, after children who were involved with gangs, after so many horrible things, was because there was a real interest in communication. And communication is not about me telling you what I want you to know. Communication is about me trying to understand what you're trying to tell me as well. It's about messages getting across. And we have the best message of reconciliation to share. God wants to be our friend. God wants, He sent us Jesus to mend our relationship. And so this is the biggest lesson that we, and if it takes changing the way we do things, then that's what we do. Because actually, unsurprisingly, it's funny how you read these things. There's some research, and it was on the news, and everybody was talking about how that children that have the greatest sense of purpose in life, they felt they were less affected by the amounts of likes that they received online. They felt less rewarded by likes, but also they were less negatively affected by few likes or negative comments. And so they said, this suggests that having a strong sense of well-being and worthiness offline could help to minimize the potential effects of social media. Really? And we could all have told them that. And don't we have the best sense of belonging that a child can have, that we can teach about, that we can get them when they're young, before they are getting to their age of independence, before they are fully engaging online, to create at their core the sense of value, the sense of worth, to know they're loved so much, they were worth dying for, to learn all those things in a way that they will understand, so that we can build, I don't know if you've heard, but emotional and digital resilience are the solution to everything, to all mental health problems and to everything. What about building spiritual resilience? That's what I would leave with you as I finish. Let's build that spiritual resilience in children. Help them to learn that whatever they do wrong, that they can come back. There's nothing they do, there's nowhere they go where they can't come back. That God isn't, and that God isn't trying to reach them. Let's build that, because resilience is about that. I don't know, I imagine that you all know what resilience is, but if you think of two balls, and you've got a snooker ball, and you drop it, what happens? Just falls. If you've got a rubber ball, and it falls on the floor, it bounces, because they're made of different things. They're full of different stuff. And that's what resilience is. Resilience is about being able to bounce back from problems, bounce back from situations. So if you teach our children spiritual resilience, teach them who they are at core, then the world of social media is just an extension of who they are. And they can cope whatever happens, they can deal whatever happens. And we know that all we're doing is helping them see how relevant God's word is to their digital native lives, so that whatever they do, they can do it all for the glory of God. Thank you very much.
We hope that you've enjoyed listening to this talk. For more resources and training, please visit the resource area at bdeducation.org.uk.